Hello everybody, welcome to my session. You made a good decision coming to my session. I'm going to talk about the Kaizen culture and the core of all Agile practices, actually, retrospectives. And my agenda will be a little bit about fundamentals of Kaizen, the Kaizen culture, and then I'm going to mention Mura, and Muri. Maybe you heard, a lot of you already heard. And then mostly I'm going to talk about the retrospectives. But first I want to tell you a little bit about my company, ACM. ACM has been founded in 2007. We are a technology and consultancy company. We are especially specialized in Agile methodologies and Agile practices. We offer three main services: consulting, training, and outsourcing. We are active in Turkey, Istanbul based, but we have also quarters in Russia, Greece, United Arab Emirates, and Azerbaijan too. In consultancy part, we have two types of consultancy. The first one is, as I said, we are mostly specialized in Agile practices, and we are giving consultancy in transition, Agile transition, improving the processes, current development processes, and adopting Agile engineering practices as well. And in software engineering also we have the consultancy services to review the architecture, and design and technologies, and increasing the tangibility of the software. In the training part, we have trained over 4,000 IT and non-IT professionals in over 200 companies, mostly again in Turkey, Istanbul based. We are giving Scrum.org certified programs, certified training programs, and also we are in close relationships with Scrum Alliance too. And also we have the Agile Engineering Practices Technical Boost trainings, which include test-driven development, continuous integration, and refactoring. And also we have outsourcing in means of the manpower and also turnkey projects. Okay, it was a short introduction about my company, and also you may find some flyers in the chairs. I'm also an organizer in Agile Turkey. Agile Turkey is a non-profit organization to spread the use of Agile practices in Turkey also. And last year we have held the first region's biggest Agile Summit. It was Agile Summit 2013, and this year we are going to do another one, and we have really good guests, including a closing keynote by Ken Schwaber too. We really love to see you all in Istanbul. Istanbul is much more warmer than Kaunas. Okay, now let's start with Kaizen. Kaizen is two words actually in Japanese. Consists of two words. Kai means change, and Zen means good. So the word becomes actually change for the better, because it's a continuous process, it's a continuous philosophy. In Kaizen, we do not master a plan, we create transparency and inspect and adapt accordingly. There's also another word in Japanese, which is kaikoku. It can be translated as a breakthrough Kaizen, a big step for being better, to a better position. But Kaikoku and Kaizen is a little bit different. Kaizen differs from Kaikoku in means of the amount of change, little changes with continuous little changes, and the need of change also. We can say the wheel has been not invented in a Kaikoku. It has been invented with little steps of the other wheel prototypes, maybe you can say. And continuous and little steps is very important, we said, in Kaizen, different from Kaikoku. And also everyone's contribution is very, very important. It must not be considered as a top-down approach to make things better. Everybody must contribute, create some ideas, and apply them. It must not definitely be a command and control Kaizen culture. It must be an intrinsic improvement process, and it must be a continuous process also. Kaizen culture actually roots back to the World War II effects, when Japanese people started recreating their buildings, roads, everything, and also they started recreating their processes as well, restructuring their processes as well. Toyota takes the lead in this process, in this history, but also Canon and Nippon Steel of some biggest companies also applied a lot of practices, a lot of ideas of their employees. Their contribution was, as I said, very important, and all those were the fundamentals of the lean idea, which is also the lean production system, Toyota production system. And a little bit about, I want to mention the three ways, the three sins. We have three sins in Kaizen. You cannot do these things. It's like, if you believe it's like a religion. And the first one is the muda. Muda is, as you see, any form of waste in your processes. That does not contribute to any value of your processes, any value to your customers or your services. And Toyota defines 7 big wastes also, which are transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overprocessing, overproduction, and the defects. That means you are going to make rework for the defects. Very easy way to remember this is the Tim Wood wording. And another sin is Mura. Mura is the unevenness in your systems, in your workstations, and so on. If you make uneven loads, as we all know, the chain is always as strong as the weakest link. So Mura is another sin. Your all terminals and processes and systems must be even in the load, and sometimes the bigger Mura you have, then the bigger Muri, also unreasonable burden on some terminals or some systems or the people working. And some implementations of Kaizen in this history, in these companies, were 5S, one of them is 5S. Again, with 5 Japanese words starting with S has been generally translated in the S words of English. It begins with Seiri, which is sort, and Seiton, set in order, Seiso is shine, and Seiketsu, standardize, and sustain is Shitsuke in Japanese. Sort, you must keep only the necessary things in your systems. You must get rid of the unnecessary parts. So you have to sort your systems and processes. In Seiton, or setting in order, all these necessary items must be very easily accessible so that you don't waste any time accessing your inventory or accessing your systems processes. And shine is literally cleaning your workplace. You have to clean. Keep clean, always. Keep clean your workplace in means of, as you mentioned, your codes must be also clean in the software development. And standardize, Seiketsu, you need to build big standards, huge standards to maintain all these issues so you can sustain all these cycles. Another implementation of Kaizen is the Deming Cycle or the PDCA cycle, where you plan a process improvement plan, then take the action, execute your plan, and check your feedbacks and act accordingly. This is also called the PDCA or the Deming cycles. Another implementation of the Kaizen is the quality circles, where a group of people come together and they meet in frequent time intervals to work on improving all the processes of the company. Quality circles also can be used to increase productivity, improve quality, and also improving employees' morale, because this idea actually goes to everybody. The employees' contribution to make improvement is very important, as I mentioned before. Let's skip to the retrospectives. All these fundamentals of Kaizen, elimination of waste, Muda, is actually in the heart of all Agile practices. And for the Kaizen culture to be strongly adopted, you need to inspect and adapt accordingly by creating transparency. And you do this in the retrospectives. It's a definite time box for improvement for Kaizen, actually. What is retrospective? Norman Kurt, first in 2001 book, Project Retrospectives, described retrospective as a ritual gathering of a community at the end of the project to review the events and learn from the experience. No one actually knows the whole story of the project. Each person has a piece of the story. The retrospective ritual is the collective telling of the story and mining the experience for wisdom. Actually, in the retrospectives, everybody has their own story. They have their own good parts and bad parts of the story of the project, or in Agile methodologies and also Scrum. In Scrum framework, it is called the sprint or the iteration. Everybody has an idea about this iteration themselves, but where they come together and talk about it. And also his book, and this idea is also very aligned with the Agile Manifesto principle number 12, which reads, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts their behavior accordingly. Also in Kurt defined the prime directive, and I really strongly believe that when I facilitate retrospectives, I start with reading this prime directive loud, and then we start retrospectives, because it builds a good framework to think about how we are going to think in the next retrospective session. And it reads, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. So this is very important, as Joe mentioned. Community of trust, the first actual organizational pattern by Jim Coplin had told in our trainings was, yeah, Scrum is a framework, for example, built of some organizational patterns, but the first pattern must be the community of trust. So if you don't have the trust in your team, there's a problem, and you cannot improve yourself without trust. So this prime directive actually defines also the trust. We have to trust the team. The team members must trust each other about everybody did their best job they could, but still there are some maybe problems or impediments, so we are going to be talking about this in the retrospective session. So it is a good idea to start your retrospectives with this prime directive reading loud. How many of you are Scrum Masters, for example, in this room? Scrum Masters? Okay, not so much. How many of you are retrospective facilitators? Not even, I mean, it doesn't have to be Scrum, but facilitating retrospectives. How many of you? Again, very few. Okay. So for all the others and anyone that will be maybe facilitating retrospective, this is a good my good advice to start with the prime directive. Also, the facilitators already know that we have three main questions that has to be answered in the retrospectives. The three key questions, one of them is, what went well? So that we can celebrate our team's way of doing. That was good, so we are going to keep on doing these things. And also we are going to celebrate. So you have to answer what went well in the last sprint or the iteration. And the other question is what went less well. We don't like to say what went wrong because it is a negative sentence. We generally want to be positive. So we say, okay, it was not so well, it was less well. And what still puzzles us? This is the third question we need to answer. This question is for categorizing our ideas that we cannot put into the previous two boxes. There are some problems, and what are the impediments actually? What are the impediments is a question every day asked in the daily stand-ups. The third question of the daily stand-up is what is impeding me or what is impeding us in means of teams, but this time not in means of your job, your work, or the business value. This time in retrospectives, you need to ask the third question to categorize your impediments in the process, not about the business value or the job or the sprint work, etc. To have successful retrospectives, as actually for everything, you need preparation. You need to prepare for your combat. And what you do for preparation must be setting aside some time. You definitely should set aside some time for preparation. And you need to set a place, the right place. In Scrum, again, generally the Scrum teams are in their own project room, in their Scrum room. Generally, this is the place where you hold retrospectives. But if you are doing distributed Scrum or other Agile practices that are people working around some different buildings or different countries sometimes, still you need to set a right place to get people together, maybe with the video conferences as well. But you need to set the right place. And also you need to pick the right materials. Depending on which technique of retrospective you're going to use, that I'm going to mention a little bit later, you need to pick some materials for post-its, some colored pens, etc., stickies. And you need to set the stage. As a retrospective facilitator, you need to go to the place you have set, and you must build the retrospective stage. Like if you're going to play a game, the materials must be distributed to the seats, and etc. You need to prepare the stage. So you also need to invite the right people to the right place at the right time. Generally, in Scrum teams, it is the Scrum team that is always invited to the retrospective. But if, again, I said, it is another Agile iterative way, then you maybe need to invite the line managers as well. So I'm going to mention now about some techniques you may apply, which are Glad, the Sailboat Retrospective, and Starfish Retrospective, which I like the most. I really use Starfish Retrospective so much. And the sixth thinking has Edward de Bono's way of thinking. I'm going to mention about it. And dialogue sheets, maybe you have heard or you have used. There are the dialogue sheets, and 4 L's: liked, learned, lacked, and longed for. And there are much more retrospectives being built maybe at the moment, just depending on the Kaizen ideas. The 3 questions must be answered, but you need to focus your way of thinking into some category, and you can create your own retrospective way that works well with your team. So you may find different techniques too when you look at it. I put some photographs from our teams in Istanbul, in Turkey. One of them is the Glad, where all the team members post their ideas on what made them mad in this sprint. The other one is the sad part, what made them sad in the sprint. And the other part is the glad part. Again, generally I facilitate this like some facilitators do. Okay, let's think about what made us mad, and then they discuss their ideas and write down some of them to the wall. But generally I facilitated this not that way. I give, okay, let's think silently 10 minutes or 5 minutes for mad and sad and glad. Then I group them with the same post, the same ideas, and discuss some, try to find out some actions which are written down here for the mad and sad parts. And also the team commits to keep on doing what they have done and they were glad of. So there must be absolutely a commitment to keep on doing what they were happy. And they have to find some actionable Kaizen actions, items for mad and the sad parts. So the idea of the actual retrospectives is this: to find the dysfunctions, the problems, and find some resolutions and actions to apply in the next sprint. Another one is the Sailboat Retrospective, and this retrospective uses a metaphor for the good things are winds, like the wind and anchors in the sailboat. The winds, the good parts that are setting this ship, setting this team, setting this ship on track and very fast. and what are the anchors that are slowing us, slowing the team in means of the processes building increments. And these rocks and a bad pirate there is the risks on the way. What are our risks? The team discusses again and posts ideas in the appropriate parts, and then we group them in, for example, this 2 has been the same ideas, this 3 has been the same ideas, and we again write down some actions that we are going to do for these risks and for the things that are impeding or slowing us. And we also commit as a team to keep on doing all these good things that are making us faster. Another retrospective, as I said, is Starfish, which I like. And this Starfish retrospective, again, tries to answer all the bad things in means of 5 categories, which are keep doing, standard keep doing, so we were glad of. And the other one is more of, the other one is less of, and start doing, and stop doing. Again, the team posts their ideas to do more. Okay, the team is doing something and it is good, but it must be more. If they think that it must be more, they post it in the more of. Sometimes, okay, we are doing this, but we cannot stop doing, but we must do less. So they post their ideas in the less of. And brand new ideas are posted in the start doing section, like we must start pair programming, let's say, for example. It can be an idea. And stop doing is, okay, we must definitely stop this doing because it is very big thing that where it's an impediment or it's a block for the team in the process. Another way is 6 Thinking Hats. 6 Thinking Hats is Edward de Bono's book, and it provides a framework for people to think about some topic by categorizing the thinking way on some way of thinking, one idea at a time, not one idea at a time, one direction at a time, actually. And the hats in here, the white hat is the information, that what we know, or we call it the facts, what we have at hand. And for, let's say, 10 minutes, the team thinks about only the facts, what we know about the sprint or the iteration. The yellow hat is the benefits and feasibility. We call it the optimistic hat. Actually, there are some hats teams do like this, and they sometimes wear on their hats. Actually, literally, they wear the hats and think about the appropriate way of direction. For example, 10 minutes, yellow hat are the benefits and the optimistic way of thinking. And after that, the black hat is the pessimistic way of thinking. It is a skeptical view of thinking. What was bad? Everybody criticizes the way of doing the job for the last sprint for, let's say, 10 minutes. And creative thinking is the green hat. When you wear your creative hat, you only try to focus on what we are going to do next in the sprint. What can we do new, like start doing in the Starfish retrospective? The team tries to focus on the new things. And the red hat is the feelings. It was like Matt said, Glad's mad. What people or the team was mad, they were unhappy. Maybe there are some communication issues between the team members, and they post ideas for 10 minutes with this red hat. And also, at the end, they wear their blue hat, and they think about their thinking way. Even the retrospective itself. Is this retrospective going good? How can we make this retrospective better for the next sprint? Something like that. And as I said, some teams really, literally wear these hats in the retrospective sessions sometimes. Another retrospective technique is the dialogue sheets. And this dialogue sheets is kind of a board games like Monopoly or some other things you have definitely played before. There are some questions along the way, and it again start with this one is a dialog sheet for retrospective. These are created in Stockholm, Royal Institute for Technology. There are some other versions of these dialog sheets for sprint plannings, for sprint reviews, for project kickoffs, team kickoffs, etc. And this one is a retrospective dialog sheet. Again, it starts with here. The resolution is not so well, but it starts with the Norman Kerr's prime directive, retrospective prime directive, and along the way you go to the questions from 1 to when you wander around the board, you also have an avatar from start to stop, and you write some actions as you answer all these questions. Okay, there are some techniques, but which technique you apply, the important part is, as I said, you must have your results applied. If you do not take actions, you do not create actions and apply them for the next sprints, then the retrospectives actually become themselves a muda, a waste of time. So you need to do some things to effectively create actions and keep track of them. You must first of all note the results of all the retrospectives. You must note the actions, as I showed in the last picture, the Kaizen action. And these actions must be very deliberate. I mean, it must be something like, we are going to do this. If this function is, we do not have good communication in the team, the action must not be something like, we are going to make better communications. No, it is not like this. The action must be something, we are going to make good communications by doing this. For example, we're going to socialize, we're going to a bowling session, or we're going to a game, etc. You must decide on, you must set the actions, or I will not engage in horseplay, let's say. And follow up all these actions, not in the daily stand-ups, also in the next sessions as well, but in the daily stand-ups also you must follow up these actions, and you must go to the owners of actions regularly and check the progress. So, okay, we have decided to do this, so how is it going? Are we doing that? So the team must own also. And also you must set up a follow-up session before the next retrospective, so that you can sum up all the advances that you have been through in the sprint for going better in the next retrospective. And also, of course, you must set the next retrospective meeting. Generally in the Scrums, not generally, it's always at the end of the sprint in the Scrum, but in other iterative ways of Agile methodologies, you must set again the time for the meeting, next retrospective meeting. And finally, you must share the results with other teams in your company so that they can also benefit the ideas, the actions you have created maybe. And also, you must collaborate with other Scrum Masters, other retrospective facilitators, other retrospective Kaizen boards, or the Kaizen actions may really work for your team too. You must have a collaboration with them. Finally, I want to mention on some dysfunctions that generally occur in retrospectives. There's too much talk. Everybody is talking about the bad things, but no action suggestions come. Everybody is just complaining. These kind of retrospective becomes complaining sessions. It may last for hours, so you must prevent that happening. And the other thing is, there are too many action suggestions this time, but nobody's talking about the action suggestions. Everybody's just saying, let's do this, let's do that. We're going to be better if we apply this, but no thinking about why, the root causes. That's another dysfunction in retrospectives. And uncomfortable or controlled conversations. This is a case when Scrum Masters are chosen from the project managers or the line managers. In these cases, the team does not feel so comfortable about talking about the impediments, all the bad things happened in the last sprint. And I strongly advise people to facilitate the retrospective, just someone outside the team maybe, if this Scrum Master is like the line manager or a project manager. And it creates a lack of transparency. And lack of transparency just is a very big problem when you are using the empirical process control in the as old agile methodologies. In the heart is the transparency and inspection and adaptation. So if you lose your transparency, you cannot inspect accordingly and adapt to a better situation. Taking the issues personal and unwillingness to talk to them, on the subjects. This also depends on the cultures. In some cultures, people are not willing to talk about other ones. And in the team culture, team has also its own culture. If there is no good collaboration and communication skills in the team, sometimes people just do not want to talk about the bad things that his friend has done. So they just don't speak, and this is a problem also in retrospectives too. Repeated talks and bored team members. Sometimes you have to make retrospectives funny with games, some jokes or some videos, etc. You must choose a technique. Only talking about all the bad things and the Kaizen idea sometimes makes bored the team members. So you must find facilitate retrospective as a funnier stage. And another dysfunction is no preparation. As I said, you have to prepare as a retrospective facilitator. You need to prepare for retrospective. You choose materials, etc. And too many goals, again, this is a dysfunction. The team sometimes, generally this happens in the first sprints, first or the second sprint, still goes on, team tries to solve everything. But you cannot solve everything at just one sprint. You need to inspect, you need to employ a solution, apply it, check the benefits, what has been better, and then, or what has been worse in the sprint, and then you need to change all these actions accordingly. But if you try to follow all the rabbits, you cannot get one. So you need to focus on one or two solutions at a time in a sprint. And sometimes action items are not clear enough, or they are subjective, and I mentioned that, like if the problem is bad communication skills, your action must not be we're going to have better communication. You need to define an action that is going to be applied in the next sprint. Another dysfunction, the last one, is one person owns the actions, all of the actions. All the Kaizen actions are written down, and generally the Scrum Master or the team lead sometimes owns this, and this is a dysfunction. This just breaks the collective ownership of the team's Kaizen culture. Team must own. Everybody in the team must commit to apply all these actions for the next sprint, not only Scrum Master or the team lead, etc. And finally, I want to show you some Kaizen examples in industrial design, which I like most. And these watermelons are for sure very effective for the supermarkets and for carrying also. It reduces the waste of space between the rounded watermelons. And these are grown like in cans or cube cans. They are seeded in that cans. And when they grow, they just have this shape, this cube shape, and the plate is opened, and then they are carried away in a very efficient way. And also you can clean your floors by just reading a book. Your feet can do that. This is a good Kaizen example for me. And give your child this to prepare the snowballs very fast. They're going into a snowball combat, so this must be very handy. And the best I like this MagSafe. I have also experienced this. This is a great design by Apple. And I think a lot of you, maybe you know, but the charging unit connection of the MagSafe is a magnet, so it is not a plug. So when your child just runs in the corridor, near your laptop and tackles with the cord, your laptop is safe and your child is also safe. And I've experienced this with my daughter when she was 6. Really, it's a great design for me. I love this Kaizen examples in industrial design. And finally, retrospectives depend on the same idea actually. This is, you cannot do everything the same way, repeatedly, and expect something different to happen. You need to change the way you are doing so that your outcomes may be different. So if you are still trying to do the same thing and over again, then it's clear that you must be insane. You have to change your way of doing in the retrospectives. Thank you. I think I've used my time. I can have some questions if you have.
I think you answered my question in the very last slide. I'll talk quieter. I think you answered my question in your last slide. When you're doing retrospectives, there's going to be lots of them over the course of a project. Do you tend to use the same retrospective technique, or do you swap it around? Do your teams get bored with the same technique? Yeah. And also, you might want to answer, do different retrospective techniques work better with different teams, different styles of teams?
Yeah, definitely. Generally, when I start with a team, I start with Matt said glad, the three ways of thinking, but then change after, let's say, 2 sprints. Actually, I try to make the team to decide on which technique. I want to train them about the retrospectives. I generally give the ideas of the retrospectives, the techniques ideas, and then they pick up the technique. But I start, when I'm the facilitator and the team does not know, I start with Matt said glad and change to generally the starfish. Starfish is becoming after Matt said glad a little bit wider of idea columns. So there are richer actions in the retrospective. But depending on the team's structure, sometimes starfish does not work, and you just use the sailboats or the dialogue sheets maybe. So you need to align your technique, you need to pick your technique depending on team's preferences too. Question?
What if the members are mad on some things, but other team members are really glad about those things?
About the same thing, someone's very mad. Yeah. Okay, actually then in such a cases there is a problem with the root cause with the problem is that person is not getting along so well with the team's other members. So you need to, maybe there's another technique called 5 whys. You ask 5 times why. For example, why are you mad? You can start with that. And when he says or he or she says something, then you ask again why. And 5 levels of why just goes into the root cause why actually he or she was said. And generally these kind of things, the team has not become a real team. It's in maybe the storming phase of the forming, storming, norming and performing cycle. Sometimes the teams are storming and this is something good. But you need to define and underline the root cause. Maybe you can use the 5 whys technique for that.
How long should one retrospective? What is the optimal time for
the time box? In Scrum, we know the time box. Actually, it is for 4 week sprints. It is 3 hours. The retrospective, but it must not extend. It definitely must not extend. But not in Scrum, but in other agile methodologies, the time. There must be a time box about 10% of the working time. But again, as I say, in Scrum, it is definitely 3 hours for months of sprints. 3 hours is quite enough. If you keep it longer, then it becomes everybody's talking a lot of things, no actions, and they may become muda themselves, waste.